they came to me and they asked me, would I consider switching? And he goes, and then I realized I'm not even sponsored by you.
I should do that.
And just do it that way.
I might actually do that.
Welcome back to Talent Talks. This is a hosted podcast of Titus Talent Strategies, who exists to equip companies to make the best attraction, hiring, engagement, and development decisions. And we are all thinking through the lens of everything we do of what's best for people first, then what's best for partners or our customers, and then lastly, what's best for profits. But we are a wildly successful, fast-growing company, and we're making loads of money. No, when I say profits, you know what? Here's the deal. We exist for one thing. Our end game, our end goal as a company is generosity. So giving back to our people and giving back to the communities that we live in, communities that we serve, and making the world a better place. If you were on the podcast last week or sometime whenever you heard the other podcast, I talked all about kind of purpose and giving and meaning and why we exist as a company. So if you've not heard that, tune into that one. But I am sitting here today with another friend. I have a lot of friends, and they're not just like friends that I'm connected to on LinkedIn. I have a lot of those too, and I don't know who the flip they are. And I got to the point I have to keep deleting people to accept people because LinkedIn caps me on my actual connection. So they gave me a new button called follow. Thanks for that, LinkedIn. But I'm sitting by another person who's a bit of a LinkedIn legend. I don't know if you call him that, but I get to call him friend, and I also got to call him lots of things behind his back. but we also, he's a bit of a swear word at Titus. No, he's not. I'm just joking.
It's true.
Oh my gosh. I'm sitting here with Joel Lalgee, and he has got stories glorious and around talent, recruitment, and he's you'll hear a slight accent as well because he's part British, just like the bottom half. No, he's a good friend. So I'm sitting here, Joel Lalgee, welcome to Talent Talks.
Great to be here. Super excited. We were joking around before. I'm not used to this whole like in-person thing. Like I'm so used to Zoom podcasts. So awesome to be here. Awesome to be in your house, not too far away from where I am. So good to be here.
It's in my house. That's where my podcast is, if you're wondering.
Oops.
That's fine. It's fine. I got my kids crawling on the floor over here. I got the dogs now. It's not that bad. But I was just saying to Joel, we need to fix some of this. It's a bit bland and plain, but next week it will be nice and really cool, trimmed out and decked out. But also that was the other part. Is like I want things to be excellent, and we don't delay. And and that's Joel's story as well. Like he's a work in progress. So
it's true.
I'm joking. True. I knew this would be funny. This would be a good podcast. We got some stories to tell. But all right, Joel.
Yeah,
you're probably the person who's inspired me the most on the whole not online, just branding. Like, how do you brand yourself? How do you brand your company? How do you brand? And so, for all of our wonderful listeners, talk about give us the vision, what you have on branding. Why do you do what you do? How do you do it? Impress us with the meganess of what you do.
Well, some people get me confused with Gary V on LinkedIn. You know, I'm about at that level. No. I think, like, I just want to say too, like, obviously, for anyone who doesn't know, could be a lot of you, I used to work at Titus, and really, like, my whole branding and content journey actually began at Titus. And I was like thinking, it was weird. I was driving over here, and I was thinking, like, how could I kind of talk about this, and like, what would make sense to kind of set the scene and give some context. But like, one of the big things for me was while I was at Titus, I suddenly started getting envisioned for building a personal brand, and this idea that you could start to attract business, you can start to attract talent, you can start to attract, just inbound interest to you using social media. And so when I was at Titus, I remember, kind of just starting to write posts on LinkedIn, probably questionable content at best. Like one in particular I remember doing on a Saturday was like emoji math, where I would, use like an emoji arm, and then I'd say like arm plus like a brain equals money. All right. And I think at most companies, like the CEO, like if they're I was gonna say if they're smart. CEO, if would probably be like, what are you doing? Like, why are you posting these kind of weird posts? And I was really just given freedom at Titus to be able to like actually start posting, start really discovering what's become something which is a lot bigger over the past couple of years. So thank you for that. Thank you for not like stomping out the dream when it started. But yeah, I think for me, like I've got, I think this is crazy, 160,000 followers on LinkedIn.
That is insane.
It's pretty insane. And then 50,000 on TikTok now, which has happened in the last 6 weeks. And then about 6,000 on Twitter. And, really that's been a lot of consistency, a lot of like figuring out platforms, figuring out how to build an audience, and then how to like kind of like tell stories. But then obviously you've got to make money from it, right? That's what everyone asks. Like, how do you monetize? How do you make it worth the time? And so really the last couple of years has just been figuring out really from a place of like pure obscurity. Like I'm not a CEO. I'm not Grant Cardone. All right, I can't like take pictures in front of my jet. I'm like a normal person. So like, how can like a normal person build a brand that like just starts generating business and starts generating interest? So I've been doing it now for about 3.5 years, which is crazy.
I mean, that what you said at the end there, like, I'm not this, how do I do this? But you went the very clear, authentic route. Like, I remember sitting there going, what are you doing? Like, who's going to follow this? Who's going to be into this? Like, I'm just like, I remember thinking, and then we had you teach the senior leadership team on why you're doing it and how you're doing it.
That was like a month into it too.
Yeah. But you were like, here are the algorithms. Here's how we do stuff. And I think everyone was like, I get where you're going. Like, that's a lot of work. I ain't got time for that. I haven't got this. And you're like, oh, I'm going to prove that the time invested in here, it's gonna do what I want it to do for my own personal brand. But anyway, it's clearly, and we'll get into more of this because I got more questions on this. But as much as you're willing to answer, when you fast forward and you look at 5-10 years down the road, where you see things going for you with what you're doing? Like what makes you go, that'd be awesome, I'd be really happy?
Like, I think like, as somebody who, I mean, obviously I worked at Titus long enough to kind of catch that entrepreneurial bug and like, hey, if you have a vision for something, you can build it. So I'm constantly thinking, not only, because I think a lot of content creators automatically go to like just brand, what do they call that? Like brand sponsorship and like monetizing that way and doing like brand deals. I think for me, because I kind of grew up in that talent space as well, and like this idea of recruitment with content is something that's close to my heart. Yeah. Where I could see it going is really just teaching corporate teams how they can start to build content. Yeah. And I'm kind of dubbing something new because we got employer brand, and then to me, there's a big difference between employer brand and like recruitment personal brand. And we're seeing this in the sales space all the time, where you have like traditional marketing, which is based on colors, text, the brand voice, but then you have this emergence of like, particularly in the technology space, you got like AEs creating their own brand, and like, they're like two separate things though, and they kind of collide. Which like employer brand people get pretty annoyed when I start talking about this because they want to own a recruiter's personal brand. The way that I look at it is, a recruiter isn't going to be with your company forever. Yeah. But recruiting is all about relationships. And so what I think you can do is I think you can scale relationships online. Yeah. And you're going to take that with you to your next organization. So it's not something the company owns. But while you're with the company, obviously it's going to collide because you're going to talk about my life, my job, like what it's like to work. And so there's an element of employer branding. But I think there's room for companies, like particularly internal recruiting teams, to learn how to leverage personal brands. And I'm not just talking LinkedIn. Like, I think LinkedIn is part of it, but I also think like a platform like TikTok is a perfect example. And not necessarily the platform. It's like the short form video is not going away. Yep. So if you can start to master short form video as a recruiter, what you start to find is like, instead of just doing like one-on-one in-mails and emails, you still do that, but you can do it from a place where they feel like they know you a little bit. Yeah. And it opens it up. So,
well, you're saying so many things here. Okay, I gotta break this out. Number one, I've never sent an in-mail in my life.
Well, that's good.
I'm like, I never have. Anyway.
The $10 a piece, which LinkedIn, interestingly enough, LinkedIn, I think they branded themselves as like this thing that helps people.
Yeah.
But what they've been doing is they're number one, they're like one of the most profitable social media networks.
Yeah.
Because of those in-mails. Because they literally, I think it's 100 connections a week you can make, which 2 years ago it was 1,000 a week you can make. Now it's 100. And their revenue with like in-mails, LinkedIn Recruiter, everything's going up because they keep charging more and people keep paying it. And I mean, you know that. I'm
Business,
sure.
yeah. One of a huge expense for us is giving every one of our 200 headhunters full access to LinkedIn. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of the things that we use. And so, all right, you talked about personal brand. You put like there's the corporate branding, and then there's personal branding. And I'm thinking of so many business owner friends that I have that would be like, yeah, I don't want to pay him to make his own personal brand because you just made a point. You just said, well, one day I'm going to leave.
Sure.
And I mean, we're sitting here like we're still as good friends, but I'm like, yeah, you're welcome. Paying you a salary, and while you were now, do I control all of your time? No. But
yeah.
You build a personal brand, and then you took that personal brand with you, and all of these candidates and things like that. Now, because of our model, it's not like I'm like, whoa. That's not how we work. But I would imagine a lot of companies might, whatever the industry is, whether you're an amazing engineer at some software company, and you're building this big personal brand, and the business owner's like, whoa, I don't want you to make a big personal brand. People might steal you. And they're like, well, that's inevitable, isn't it? At some point in time, statistically, I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
Like, what are your thoughts on that? How do you, think from two sides on this? Like, what would your opinion be on that?
Yeah, I think number one is just like fear mentality, which I just don't think you can have with this. And like a great example of this, there's a guy called Zach Wilson who's at Airbnb, and he started creating content like 2 years ago, and now he's got 384,000 followers. So he's got more followers than Brian Chesky, I think is the CEO of Airbnb. Uh-huh. And he's a data engineer. So he's like built this brand around him being a data engineer. It helps that he works at Airbnb, obviously, because people want to listen to him.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to just see more of it. So I think the way that I would approach it as a leader is to kind of take your approach, which was like, okay, this guy's doing this. I'm going to support him.
Yeah.
Because I do think there's benefits for the business. And again, like I was talking about recruiters doing this to attract talent. So
it's a good, totally.
It's a little bit, I think if you're like a contingency recruitment firm, and
right,
I think that's where some of that fear could go, or if it's attached to sales, I can see that. But I think if it's used for recruitment, then, you take the benefits while that person's with you. And at the end of the day, like we both know too, like there's relationships online and relationships offline are two separate things. And relationships offline are more powerful than online. So that person's still got the offline relationships, which they're taking with them inevitably. So think if I'm a leader, I'm encouraging people, and I'm actually like incentivizing them to do it, because while they're with you, they're associated with you. They're still building, They're still building your brand. And I think ultimately, like, that's how people now are relating to brands more and more, is like the personal side of the brand as well. So yeah, that'd be kind of, but I get like that mindset and like where people would think of that. But I think you just got to look at the benefits ultimately.
So now I would lean more to that kind of abundance mindset. Like, you don't come from fear. Don't come try and control it. If you try and do that, people are going to feel like completely cramped. And you're a wild maverick in our terminology. And
PI.
Yes. Oh, so there's a product placement there.
PI.
So in the predictive index world, you're a maverick, which we happen to know a lot about as a certified partner. No, I'm kidding.
You can sign up here on
click the link below. But no, you're a maverick, right? You are a maverick, right? Yeah. And which means like, hey, I need lots of variety. I need to try new things. I need to be kind of entrepreneurial. I need to be creative. I don't put too many restrictions on me. Like, that was like amount of conversations I had over the years. Like, Joel's a maverick. You understand that, right? This is what he is. He is creative, and he's going to. You need to give him freedom. You need to give him freedom to figure these things out. And like, you're a top performer in our world and loved by everybody. But there's, when I say the but, it's like you're.
Well, I'm on LinkedIn as not everybody's favorite recruiter. So there's
there you go. Not everyone's favorite.
Trust me, there's a lot of people, a lot more now that do not like me. I can promise you that.
Yeah. Oh gosh, we're gonna go down that road too. But how do we? Okay, so you mentioned employment, like, or brand, like from a corporate branding, wanting to control people's individual branding.
Yeah.
Like, can we? Which if you went to anyone's LinkedIn profile at Titus, you're gonna see some little copy paste of something generic. You're like, oh, we exist for this, like our purpose statement or something like that. And we've come from the angle of like, hey, we want to professionally brand you because you're employed by us, and there we go. And we actually do pay for your LinkedIn profile because there's a little bit unique one, right?
Yeah.
And we come from that angle, not because we want to control it, but we want to, like, hey, while you're out there, tell our story too. Where do you think things are going to go? Do you think companies will need to be more embracing of what your message is, of like, no, we'll become the sponsor, and like, hey, do all these videos, but put our little logo in the corner. Like, we'll do it so they kind of have some level of it, but say what you want to say. Like, I would imagine you mentioned, like, I've said some pretty crazy things on some of my podcasts, which might not align with companies that I've worked with at the time.
Yeah.
Like, where do you think this is going?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're talking about, like, even just something bigger than just the branding, right? It's like how people view work. So I think as a whole, and I posted about this recently on Twitter, where it's like companies demand loyalty, or they've demanded loyalty for years, but then they just lay people off on a whim, like they are doing right now in the tech space, right? And then you have this idea of like culture fit, which I think is changing more to now culture add, because what is this person adding to the organization? But then also, like, just the way people view work, it's like they don't want work to consume them. They want to have like work-life balance. They want remote work. They want to be able to go about their day and work. So I think relationship with work is just changing. But then you add social media into the equation, then you've just got to see that shift of particularly Gen Z, but also, like, if you look at the numbers, for example, on my TikTok, everybody always goes, well, is it just teenagers? No, I broke down the demographics the other day, and it was 75% were 24 to 45 years old. And
whoa.
They're
looking at the teenagers, they're parents. Like,
well, 0.4% was teenagers. 0.4. So, like, we're already seeing this shift. So it's just how people relate to social media. So I think you've got to kind of get out of the way when it comes to, like, being okay with and trusting the people that you hired to represent your brand, and then ultimately realizing that, like, your people are also your brand, and especially, like, your employer brand, they are your culture. So, like, and a great example of this is, like, I think of, like, Wells Fargo, because I work there, right? Wells Fargo is a massive company. So to, like, try and sum up a culture in 2 sentences makes zero sense. Like, maybe they've got, like, a mission that goes throughout the company. But if I work at a branch like I did in Racine, Wisconsin, it's a very different feel than working at the branch in San Francisco. So it's like you have, like, multiple cultures going on. Yeah. But really what makes the company is just your experience that you have with the people you work with.
Totally.
So I think that's where, like, if you hire somebody...
Yeah, okay.
If you start freaking out and go, whoa, they're going to start posting stuff online, then I'm just asking, like, well, why did you hire the person in the first place? They're saying it online, but they're probably saying the same stuff offline, which is impacting your brand just as much.
Dude, there's some real wisdom right there.
Well,
we don't hire people and stick them in a closet and say, hopefully no one sees them.
I think of, like the brand, like Chick-fil-A is a great example, right? Because I love Chick-fil-A's brand. But you know what? I've been to some Chick-fil-A's where, like, I expected something and then I didn't get it. Like, I didn't get my pleasure. Yeah. I didn't get that, or I didn't get the feeling. And it, like, taints the brand. And it's like, but the brand is the same, but the experience that I have is different. So it affects the brand. You get what I'm talking about, though. It's like... Because that does come up again, and, like, to give some context too, like, I spent 2021.
Sorry, I'm laughing at a joke I just made. We had to cut it out.
There we go.
You can leave that in. All right. Keep going. I'm not laughing anymore. I was crying a little bit. Sometimes I make myself laugh so much I cry.
Well, I like that. I think that's good. Now I'm a little sidetracked. But,
Sorry, and I get in trouble for that too.
Sidetracking's good though. Like and two, I think I like actually what you said about the difference between like face to face than Zoom, because this is a completely different field than I'm used to anyway with podcasts. So
Yeah.
but I like it. But yeah, I guess too, like what I was saying was like I used to coach agencies, recruitment agencies
Yes.
around the world and like how to do personal branding. And I mean, recruitment agencies were freaked out at the exact thing that you're saying. Like, what if they represent me wrong? What happens if, Susie starts talking about something weird that I'm on board with? And again, it's just that fear mentality. And I think if you're leaning more towards like your people ruining your brand, you need to hire better people.
Totally. Yeah. Wow.
And it's okay. And I honestly think it's okay if a person in your brand thinks differently than your brand. Because I think we're smart enough as humans to realize that like Tony doesn't represent the whole of Adidas. He represents Tony. Like I think we're smart enough to recognize that.
Totally.
Now, if you're the person that's like running the Adidas tweets, that's a different story, right? But if like for example, this happened right recently with like Kanye.
Yeah.
And like
I was just thinking, right?
He was saying, and I saw an Adidas employee on LinkedIn like spoke up about it, and this was before they fired him, and it went viral on LinkedIn. And
what were they saying?
They were basically they were just saying like like anti-Semitism is wrong, and like she was Jewish, and she's like, I don't think we should stand for this as a brand. And obviously everybody supported her. And then, and then like 2 days later, they're like, yeah, we fired him. But when I'm reading that, it's like, I understand that that's a person. And even if they work for Adidas, it's like, I'm smart enough and we're smart enough to know that like, it's still an individual's point of view. But again, that's where it's like culture fit compared to culture add. Like this person, they fit into the culture, but they're also an individual. So I think it's just one of those weird dichotomy things.
Totally.
It's like there's levels to it. It's not that simple, I think.
I would agree. Obviously, and I squirm. Like when you went on that, I'm like, yeah, I'm good with you saying Kanye, but then when you start saying like I'm like, are we going to cut this out, or what is he going to about? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how I would feel. And I'm like, I hope, like, I just don't know what you're going to say. I don't know what Joel's going to say at this point. But I mean, the point is proven right here, because I'm like, it can get a little bit awkward.
And that's probably what it's like too. Like when I'm first posting on LinkedIn, I'm sure everyone. I mean, I remember people being like, it's like you kind of don't know what's going to come on that day,
right?
And then what happens if I say something that not everybody agrees with,
right? Yeah, which I mean, I think, these are the challenging parts to who owns somebody's personal brand and who owns the social media they write on, and what if someone else is paying? I mean, like, there's a lot going into it when you talk to employees branding themselves, and what happens when they act or behave in a way that you don't want to be the bigger brand of a company.
Which I do think with bigger brands too, this is definitely more of an issue, and I think but there's an opportunity for smaller brands that don't have like kind of the bureaucracy associated with them. Like if you're a small brand, you could totally beat out a big brand with smart social media and your people being your people. You can attract top talent.
Yeah.
Because like Amazon, they are super strict about what you can post. Some of these big companies, they will like police what you post. So if you take that opposite stance and say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna let my people post what they want to post and be themselves.
Yeah,
you can actually win in a talent game, because people start seeing your content and they're like, "Oh, that seems like a place where people genuinely enjoy and can be themselves."
Yeah,
and that's what people kind of want to work in too.
Yeah, I totally agree on. It's finding people who are, I always say value alignment, but I'm like fully aware of the culture ad.
Yeah.
It's like I really love diversity of thought and perspective, like variety, because our clients are diverse thought and diverse perspective and are diverse worldwide, at least nationally anyway. They're across the country, and we serve all different types of people from all different walks of life, all different backgrounds. So we need to have reflect that in our teams. I get that concept, but at the same time, it's kind of like, okay, but I won't give up on our value. Like, let's be really clear on our value alignment, and what's our definition by each of these concepts.
Yeah.
So our values they can be quite kind of broad concepts that people are like, yeah, I think I agree with that. But what does that look like when you come and peel it back and go to behaviors?
Yeah.
What are the behaviors that align with those values? Because I want to know what is acceptable, not acceptable, and what's welcome, what's not welcome. And so I think hiring really, really well to value alignment and being very, very clear on what you mean by in your company, then you'll get people who are going to represent that brand of the values. And we're not talking about some of the, the things that makes us all squirm, or some of us squirm, but it's actually the value alignment is a really important piece. But you're challenging me, I think on the whole topic of where do you draw the line by way of control of as a business owner or a business leader, controlling what your people are posting or representing as far as their, but it goes beyond social brand. It goes beyond,
right, exactly.
I mean, we've known each other for years, and like how you live your life and behave. I'm not like coming in going, hey, hold on a second, Joel, you work for Titus and your grass is really long. Like,
I love that. That's
what
the
are you
example.
doing? Well, is it
Landscape?
Is it?
No, I keep my grass really trimmed.
Well, I know you well enough that you're probably
I
crazy
got
OCD about that, aren't you?
No, my wife is, but
okay,
she's more than me. Yeah, no, I think.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, well, at what point do you go into somebody's life and go, well, you represent us that way? I'm like, it just comes down to value. Like, what do you mean? Let's all share the same value of excellence. Like, we represent ourselves well in it's almost when people talk about professional dress. Like, what profession is it?
What does that even mean?
Yeah, what do you mean by that? If you're going to be really like, you don't want me to dress like this, then tell me that before I come to your company.
And then I would leave, which has happened to me before. I mean, I worked at a bank where they told me that my suits were too tight. And then 2 years later, they were sued for, basically hazing new employees. So that's, I think you're right though, in terms of like trying to figure out where that balance is. But what I will say is like the company I'm with right now, what we do is we have like a company content meeting, right? Where every 2 weeks we're meeting, and the content is literally, what are the problems our clients are going through? Yeah. Like, what are we seeing in the marketplace? And then we just talk about like how we can talk about that. And I think, we got to kind of keep everything in context here. Like, we're talking about LinkedIn. So like, it's fairly safe. Like, when we're posting about recruitment. We're posting about like, how to do a counter offer, kind of like the basic recruiting things, like how you should have an interview process so you don't lose people. Okay, now we're in an employer market again. Doesn't mean you can just drag people through 17 steps.
Totally.
So we talk about that type of stuff. So I think that's where, like, in reality, again, we're talking about LinkedIn. LinkedIn's pretty safe because we all get that it's like, it is more of like a work-based platform.
Totally.
So I don't know. I think there's like less risk. I think like it would be different if we were talking about like, personal profiles on, Tinder or like, or personal even like
it depends on what profession you're in. So.
Well, even like TikTok, that's another one too, where like, hey, the virality on that platform is real, and you can say something stupid and blow up. So there's a like legitimate fear there. But I think if we're talking about LinkedIn, what do you talk about? Well, you talk about like the workplace, like the remote lifestyle, the hybrid lifestyle. Talk about like the projects you're working on, and so then, I can say, like, I think we probably have 30 to 40 regular posters on LinkedIn. No one really talks about anything that's like that crazy. Because, it's like, again, you hire people. It's like, we're not idiots. Like, nobody, like, I'm not going to post like a like a nude selfie of myself, like on LinkedIn. Like,
where would you though?
Probably Instagram, MySpace. If you search for me, though, you could find my old MySpace. And like,
can I see a picture of you in that really tight suit?
Yeah, right here. But again, like, it's, even if that was to happen, I think like the fear, like, people have these weird fears because for some reason everybody thinks that like everything is going to go viral, and I'm like, dude, like 4 people are going to see it. You need to relax. And then guess what? Like, they're gonna scroll LinkedIn for 20 minutes because that's the average time that users spend on a month on LinkedIn is 20 minutes. And then they're going to go to Instagram. They're going to go to TikTok. They're going to go watch the news. Then they're going to watch a movie. they're not thinking about your like one little post. You're thinking about it.
Totally.
No one else is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. In your team, you have a content meeting each week. So like, hey, there's some things that would be really relevant to talk about.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do.
That's a great tip.
And it's
that
more
if you
like
want people to
problems,
do-
like problems that they're going through. And then like,
yeah.
hey, we're going to provide solutions because we want to be solution providers. So
Yeah.
just add some context to that.
I love that approach. I think I'll adopt that. It's good because I think it's
My CRO kills me after watching this.
what. Just chill out.
away our secret?
Just chill out. No one's going to look at it. So 4 people are going to view it. So everyone just settle themselves down. Oh gosh.
Nick, don't steal this.
No, the funny thing is like there's always that fear that somebody thinks it's going to go like you say, something's going to go really bad or someone's going to steal your ideas or whatever.
You know
But
my
there is-
dad, right?
Yeah. But there's nothing new under the sun, and every idea that we have that we think is original, it's an adaptation of something that somebody else has already done. That's all I do. There's nothing original about me. I'm like, you know what? I had a really great idea recently. Start a podcast.
Hey,
Never been done before, eh? You know, it's kind of like, you know what else I did? I wrote a book. You know, like
Amazon bestseller.
it was for a bit. But you just think all these things. I'm like, yeah, no, but I really believe I believe that this is going to be helpful for someone.
Yeah.
It's not going to be helpful for everyone. It's not going to go. I don't believe that it's going to go viral and going to be this like raging amazing thing. But it will be helpful to some people in the topic of this area called talent. I think there are stories that are meaningful. We talked about generosity the last podcast, and how do you create stories of meaning and stuff like that. Things that, do I believe 100% of that's all going to be great content for every single person? But I'm not driven by this fear of if you believe it's something worth sharing, then share it,
And I think that's my mindset has shifted to where, actually, I mean, we were talking about him even just before we started, but a friend of ours, Raul, he's leads talent at a small marketing agency in Milwaukee. And he's been doing these videos and like, dude, they're like him being him and they're not going viral. It's, probably 500 to 1,000 views. But you know what? He can credit about 8 hires, software engineers in Milwaukee area to his content because what he does is he reaches out to them.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to break down how simple this is and take away the fear because people look at my numbers and 160,000 followers, you're getting 100 million views, blah, blah, blah. You're doing the TikTok stuff now. Here's Raul's playbook, and here's why it works. He connects to them on LinkedIn, sends a connection request, simple in-mail. Hey, I'm in Milwaukee, works for this marketing agency. We're looking like for a developer. Would you be interested? Of course not. No one responds to one in-mail. Then he just produces content 3 times a week, simple videos of just him being him, just being himself. Like it's like,
give me an example.
Hey guys, just gonna do a rap right now. Yo, yo, yo. And he's doing like raps and sort of stuff, which is awesome because it's just him being himself.
I'm getting him on
And
this
this
podcast.
is-
He's coming on.
Yeah, but listen to what happens. Then after about, a month or two, they reach back out to him and they go, hey, I've seen 1 or 2 of your videos. Like I'm interested in just having a chat. I'm intrigued because you know what?
He's intriguing.
Yeah, instead of blowing him up with 10 in-mails being like, here's another crappy opportunity brought to you by Raul Mendoza. He's just doing these videos
totally.
and people get attracted to it. And I think that is the playbook. And
Totally.
people go, how do you stay top of mind of clients? Do you know how many people that I've worked with in the past that are clients who are like, yeah, I was just thinking about you today. I'm like, I know you were because I posted a meme that got 500,000 views. I know you're thinking about me.
I
I'm
made
on
you think
nu-
about me.
I could have sent you an email that said, how you doing? Just checking in. How's the weather?
Oh,
I don't want your business. Or I could just do a meme, make them laugh, and then and then people are like, well, are hiring managers going to get mad about that you bash them? I'm like, no, because they know that they suck, and first of all, they're not even reading it or watching
and even
it.
if they did see it, you actually help them go, dude, is that me? If they have any ounce of self-awareness, like, I don't want to be the hiring manager who treats an employee.
Who's like, you're dang right. I put him through that 11-stage assessment and gave him like a psych analogy and lowballed them. That's me. And I'm, exactly.
and why would you want those to come and call you anyway? Like, it's like you're speaking to the audience you want to speak to.
Yeah.
The people who like you and they like your approach. And
Not everybody likes me though. I think this is the piece where like, that's why I like Raul's thing, because it's like under the radar, no one's getting mad at him. Like I genuinely get people like sending me hate recruiters, and I think we all know the recruiters we're talking about, like old dude recruiters who are like cold calling. Dude, I used to send faxes. I don't want to see you influencing, like you're this LinkedIn influencer. And I'm like, dude, like this is a new era of like, if I can get your attention and capture it, like if you're listening to this podcast still, you're getting a feel for us that you wouldn't get. There's no other way that you could get this feel except for like just having a conversation with us. And to me, it's amazing that I can make a 5-minute video and get, I mean, some of the analytics, it'll be like 20,000 hours worth of like Joel Lalgee for free, 5 minutes of time. And so when people go, what's the ROI? I'm like, well, there's the ROI. 5 minutes of time. 200 hours of,
and that's taking you a few years to build, but like,
yeah, well,
I'm not
no,
trashing it. I'm
well,
just saying, taking you a few years to build that following to now engage with you on a brand, and you're doing it from a personal perspective. You actually work for a company who benefits from that brand while you're there.
70% of our hires this year. So we're a recruitment agency. We went from 100 people to 160. 70% of them found out about the company through LinkedIn content. So it's like usually my content would hit them first, because I'd be like, I talk a lot about like being treated like an adult. People love that, especially in the recruitment agency world. Listen up, Robert Half. Like you can't just tell people
when to go to the bathroom, when they can do this, and
that's
check
what you do.
Totally.
You know that world. So then I'm like, hey, I work for an agency where if you're getting your results, nobody's micromanaging you. And then what happens is they can't connect to me because I'm at 30,000 connections. So they send me a connection request. I send them an automated message. Say, if you want to get in contact, get in contact with our internal recruiter. Yeah. And then as soon as they connect with our internal recruiter, they see my content, and then they see our whole team's content, and we consume their news feed. And they're like, oh, wow, these people are like they're doing something different. And then they meet with our team, and they're like, oh, like you're the same person that's doing those posts. Because it's like authenticity. Yeah. You don't build a personal brand that's separate. Like there's a reason I didn't go the thought leader CEO version, because I'm not a thought leader CEO.
You don't think.
Yeah, I don't think about anything that I
think I do.
No, but you know what I'm saying.
It's
not credible. It wouldn't be credible if I was like, well, I'm the next Lou Adler. Like it's not gonna play. I just went from where I was at, and then when people meet me,
well, that's the point. It works. It works, right?
It works, and we're at the beginning here too of where it is. And so even like you said, this is 3 years in, but that's why I used Raul as a perfect example. He's been doing it for 2 months. Yeah. 8 internal hires. So my idea has shifted, where it used to be agencies can do this to develop business. I get some inbound leads, but I still have to do a lot of outbound. The only difference is people kind of know me when I do the outbound. Yeah. But I still have to, because winning business is never easy. Yeah. Nobody's ever wanting to sign a check. It's like you got to build a relationship. Yep. But internal recruiting, that's where the money is at.
Yeah, I just talked a bit about on the last, I think it's the last podcast we did, but on this whole topic of whatever you're doing, like you need to become a talent company.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if you're a roofing company, you need to become a talent company. If you're a car dealership, you need to become a talent company. Like there's so many things that you have direct competition, and people do exactly the same stuff. Yeah, they call it something different, or they pitch it something different, but the product's the same, the service is the same. There's called competition. But if you become a talent company, no one can compete against it, because the company with the best talent wins.
Yeah.
With brand, with storytelling, with connection. Like people do business with the people they like. You know, most of the cases, I don't know one Amazon employee, and I don't need to.
Yeah. Although I will say there is someone on there called Amy Miller. I don't know if you follow her at all, but she actually does work at Amazon, and she works for like AWS. They're like, they're building like rockets or whatever. So she looks for like engineers and stuff. And
no, but I'm saying as a consumer.
Oh yeah.
I don't.
No, you don't.
I press some buttons and my stuff will be here in a bit.
Yeah.
It's not. I don't use Amazon because I have a relationship with anyone. Because I like the people.
Because it's great.
It gets it. I'm like, great, it's awesome. But most of the places I choose to interact with is because I like some of the people there as well.
Yeah.
The businesses that I enjoy working with, and I think if I need to get a roof done, I'm going to buy from somebody that I actually like working with and I trust. And so it requires them to recruit a better person, that a buyer like me
Yeah.
wants to work. So I'm saying become a talent company, not just a roofing company. Don't think about your roofing goals. So therefore, you need to figure out what your strategy is to attract people who want to work in your company, not come for a job. Like, no, no, no.
100%.
So the stuff that you're saying here today is I think is really useful for a company goes to think about, how do I attract the right people I want, and how do I repel the people I don't want? Equally, both are important.
100%.
And I think what you're really kind of telling the story here for me of like, how do I get my army of employees and teams at our company to actually start thinking like that, where they have a personal brand which is really, really attractive, whether they're with us or whether they go somewhere else, but they become more attractive. And when you say some people hate me as well, I'm like, cool, let's get on the same page let's keep those ones away. Like, I don't want those ones, So I think there's some really interesting stuff there. And I know for our listeners as well, a lot of business leaders trying to figure out, how do I do the talent thing? How do I attract people better? How do I retain them better? How do I develop them, engage them, all that kind of component? Well, attracting talent, and is the brand piece that you're talking about, I think is really, really quite fascinating.
I think someone said it. I think it's like Gary Vee, maybe. Obviously, he's like the poster child for anything brand and social media related, at least. He's like almost like become a media company, It's like if you can build a following, it helps with sales. It's going to help with employment. It's going to help with all of those things. I think in terms of incentivizing people, a big one is money. Like, I get paid at Hirewell to put out content. Like, they don't just go, hey, yeah, we really value it. They're like, hey, we'll pay you. Mm-hmm. Now, there's criteria that I've got to fit. Like, I got to run a podcast, which I do run a podcast where, like, I invite guests who, typically chief people officers at
it's
companies.
really weird. You never invited me.
Well, it's internal recruiters.
Joking.
Yeah, I did invite you a bunch too. Like, and
you're right. You did.
You're pretty busy, believe it or not.
True.
Like, this is probably the only time I could have gotten
on my terms.
Yeah, you're like, come to my house on my podcast, okay? You'll promote me.
No, my terms, my turf. That's how we work.
Yeah, which it like, but they get that it's a big driver for, like, that's a big business driver for us too, because I'm strategically going after chief people officers.
Yeah.
But now I enjoy the conversations as well. So it's obviously not like, it's not like a sales pitch when I'm with them. It's just, I love the conversation.
Yeah, totally.
But they incentivize it. So we incentivize all our employees, and there's different levels. Cool. I'm not talking $1 million here either. I'm talking like, it's enough though to where it's worth it.
And do you think there's any value in, like, how hard would you push if somebody was like, I don't want to do that.
Then you just let them do you. That's what I say. But what you'll find is, like, particularly younger people coming into organizations, they're just more into it. So you just throw out, like, who would be interested in this? The people who are interested, you get them in on board too. Now, here's the kicker, and this is where 99% of people are going to fail.
Yeah.
As a leader, you got to lead from the top. I happen to work at a company where our chief revenue officer, who's a partner at the company, he gets this stuff. So he's like the leadership voice in there. You don't have leadership buy-in, but that's the same with so much.
That's the same with everything.
You don't have buy-in from leaders, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Like, if your leaders won't get involved in the hiring process and they're not willing, if your hiring managers won't, good luck. It's like, so I don't, but definitely for this, like, you got to have like one person they don't have to be on the executive team, but they've got to be empowered by the executive team.
Yeah.
Like, you can't be shutting them down and not supporting it.
What's something you think not saying you like are very intimately tied into my personal brand, but what's something I should do from your opinion?
Look, I think you're doing it right. It starts with these types of podcasts. And then I think it's getting rid of that, like, because I do remember this too, like a couple of years ago when we were talking about it, one of the things you said was like, well, one of the things that I'm conscious of is, like, what happens if, like, a CEO of a company that we're doing business with doesn't like my content and they don't want to do business with me? Which I think is, like, that's naturally what people think, right? Uh-huh. Like, you're not the only person who's ever said that. And granted, when I started, I had nothing to lose. So it makes it a little easier. But I would just flip that on its head and just have the mindset of, like, what I've got to share is valuable. who I am as a person is
Yeah.
what people want to do business with.
Yep.
And so take that pressure off, first of all.
Yeah.
And, just start writing some thoughts. Like, to me, Twitter's a great place. Everyone hates Twitter now because of Elon Musk, but the reason it's so great is because you're just jotting down short thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's really concise, and it just forces you to get into to the habit. So like,
Yeah.
and then just start small. Like, I'd say, hey, you're limited in time, right? I mean, it's not like you have tons of hours to start writing.
So you would say, I mean, so practically speaking, and I'm making this personal for me, but I know that a bunch of people listening in here as well thinking, all right, what am I going to do here? Like, am I actually going to do anything about this? It's interesting. It's fascinating. They're talking about talent and recruitment. But I need to personally go, I need to develop the ritual and the habit, just like brushing my teeth, of every single day, taking 30 seconds, 5 minutes, whatever, and write something or post something or video myself, selfie video, and stick a meme out there. Or I
would start with the writing first. I think like video is like where you get to, but like there's a guy, and this guy called Joe Mullings. All right. So he's chief visionary officer for MRI.
Okay.
He's got really successful agency in the med device space, right?
Yeah.
And this guy's gone all out in content. But one of the things that he said when he did my podcast, I asked him, like, how do you go about it? And he said, get really good at writing. And then the way that you write, then you're able to communicate better on video. So you start with writing, get comfortable with that, like assembling your thoughts, then go to video. And the other thing too, I wouldn't, since you don't have a lot of time, like I would maybe consider just hiring like a ghostwriter who can write LinkedIn stuff for you, that can like, you spend an hour with them a month, just having a conversation, getting, they interview you essentially, and then they just write your post for you. As long as it's your voice, you can't.
Totally, I'm like,
it can't be you. And you'd have to find, but there's people who are like pretty good and like do it for CEOs. But that's if you don't have the time, but you see the value in it.
Yeah.
Me personally, I'd be like, hey, it takes 5 to 10 minutes to write a LinkedIn post. Just get better at writing and just quicker with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then over time, you get better with it.
Yeah.
And then you can also repurpose and like reuse stuff as well.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
All
right. Watch this space.
I think you would.
My content's going to go up.
I always told you, like, who you are offline ultimately matters the most, right? And like, I think particularly, like who you are as a person, like you're amazing at connecting with people, you're authentic, like you're all these different things. It's just then going like, how can I just communicate that online and like take the pressure off? Like you don't need to write like this like heart pounding, like, electric piece. Just, hey, I had a thought today, like this happened, and then you start thinking of content as well. Like you're with a client, they have a problem. Oh, here's a solution. And then you write that solution online and 1,000 people go, oh, I was asking that same question.
Yeah, that's good. I got it. Oh, any more advice for me? That's what the podcast really is. I bring people in to give me advice.
No, I think, I love this. I love the fact that you're doing the podcast as well. So you get a ton of content out of that. And I don't really have any other advice outside of that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I massively appreciate you coming all the way down here too.
Yeah.
And, we can do this without being on a podcast. We can hang out.
Yeah, I know.
I'll come up to you.
Even when you live like 5 minutes away from me, it was hard to get home.
You know what? When you what's going on? What are you working on right now? You skipped out of work. What did you tell your boss you're doing today? No, I'm just kidding. There's no micromanaging, is there?
No, unlimited PTO.
So, it's great. And some people hate that tui, don't they? Everyone people get all upset online about that. But is that just like everyone gets upset about everything, or?
Well, I did it. Okay, so like I said, I've gone viral a couple times in the last 2 weeks on TikTok, right? And one of the things I did is like total clickbait, but I'll be like, basically just saying, hey, I got her 30% more plus like great equity. Yeah. Plus, and then on my last post, I said, plus unlimited PTO. That's just icing on a cake. And oh yeah, I got red flag. So I just did a video and go, look, if your unlimited PTO sucks, that's just because your culture sucks. So it's that simple. Like for me, I love unlimited PTO. I don't have to ask, hey, James, can I take off? He's just like, put it in my calendar. Don't need to ask. That's what it's, I
Yep.
trust you enough to get the work done. I think where it breaks down, and someone did point this out, is like if you get sick, for example, there's a lot of gray area on like sick leave and like medical leave. So there's like legitimate things. But again,
Right.
boils down to the culture. Like
Totally.
if you've got like a good culture, then you get taken care of. If you have
Yeah.
a bad culture, you can have unlimited PTO, 4 weeks PTO. Anyway, yeah. But you're asking like anyway, like what I'm up to. So I just
What's going on? Yeah.
So I basically just in sales for Hirewell and then run a podcast. So it's recruiting is no joke because most of my content is like humor related. I was like, oh, recruiting is no joke.
That's cool.
So we're on like episode 15. I just actually released all of those on iTunes and Spotify. So go check it out. And
Say it again. Recruiting is no joke.
Recruiting is no joke.
Okay.
Yeah. And then what I've also been testing is I've got like a link tree, which basically links all your social accounts together.
Okay.
So I've been really testing out like candidate flow from TikTok onto LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's kind of in the works. So just kind of working out like a strategy of like, is TikTok like legitimately a good place to recruit people?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I guess like in terms of like connecting with me, just Twitter, LinkedIn, and TikTok.
Okay, one more. I got one more story. Thanks for all that. Great. What if you look back and you're like, somebody just said, all right, what's the best story of how you like the best recruit that you ever made,
Yeah.
and why? Was it like great company or great culture? Was it the person? Was it how you did it? You felt like super proud of this, or you made the most money? What was it?
It was actually right after I left Titus, right?
Yeah.
So, but I went over to the contingent side, so the dark side, right?
Yeah.
And I left Titus in the beginning of March 2020.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, COVID hit, and I was supposed to be recruiting me in construction, and obviously all the construction kind of stuff went away. So I ended up selling, contingent services to a connection that I'd had on LinkedIn for a really, really long time, and they did like masonry restoration. So it's just like I had no idea what I was talking about with him, but anyway, that was basically I had 2 placements at this agency that I was at, which I'm not going to go into, but I was there for about 6 months. And the second placement I had, it must have taken 8 weeks to get this guy, because this guy had been at his company for like 8 years. But it was like my first like true like contingent recruitment thing where I'm like, hey man, like, are you interested? Messaged him like 20 times, finally got back to me. And they're like, we've been trying to recruit this guy for 3 years type thing. And it was just like this huge, it was like the first time I'd ever had to recruit someone and like worry about it placing, because it was like my commission and I've been taking a commission drawer. But it was just really cool because like his company, he ended up like he interviewed, they loved him. And, even now, like I get messages from the recruitment manager I worked with who's just like, dude, he's in Chicago and he's like absolutely destroying it, like just bringing in huge accounts. But then also like I think the coolest part of it was like the current company he was at, like he was like the main guy and it was a really small business, but the owner was just like, hey, like this is the best move for you, so I'm gonna respect you and I'm not gonna give you a counter offer. And it was like this really like sad like moment, but it was like this older guy who was gonna retire anyway and like sell the business. And so it was just cool to see like him do what was right. Yeah. But then this guy just like get into this great situation, and it was a huge fee as well, which made it even better. But it was like that true feeling of like, wow, this is like impacting everybody. Everybody's like happy except for this guy whose business is taken. But it wasn't.
It's not dark humor right here.
It wasn't. It wasn't even like that. It was just like I felt really.
He had a heart attack the next day and died.
He's leaving. He's left his kids nothing now. No, but it was just like this cool moment of like, oh, this is like this guy who like I was like, man, you actually were working with a great company, because there's no other company would react this way.
Yeah.
But it was like just the right move for everyone. So, and again, that was like maybe 3 to 4 months in working at this company, which was just terrible. And
the place where you
the agency, yeah, I took them off my LinkedIn because I got threatened over and over. But anyway,
because you keep telling people how it's terrible.
Yeah, because when I had a big brand, I'd go on podcasts and I'd be like, so what about that company? And I'd be like, oh, I can't talk about them for 18 months because of a non-compete. And I, all of these.
No one at Wells
things.
Fargo has come and talked to you about you.
No one has talked to me about Wells Fargo, but I smash Wells Fargo all the time But
Not physically. You don't like physically.
no,
Okay.
I bash them all the time. Is what I mean.
Stones through their front window.
I get no, because it's like that's. Look, it's funny because I just did a post about this today where it's like I said, culture matters, pay matters more, right?
Yeah.
Because I do honestly believe that. I think there's I think kind of like culture is obviously a big deal, more so for the employer than anything else because of what you said before, where it's like you want people who want to work there. But I also think like I didn't really like, especially when I was at Titus, like I didn't really understand like what a great culture was until I went somewhere which had like a terrible culture, and it was like, oh yeah, culture it's a huge deal.
Yeah.
You know, and does that mean you're gonna love everything about where you work? Not necessarily.
Yeah.
When you experience really good with really bad,
Yeah.
you start to go, oh, okay, like this is why Titus is scaling in this way.
Yeah.
This is why this other company is a revolving door and can't grow.
Yep.
You know.
Well, on that note, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah. Great
Really,
to be
really
here.
good
Thanks
to
for
be
having me.
All right. Cheers.
See you guys.
Good job, guys.